In the last video, we set up the routes.js file. It doesn't look like there's a whole lot going inside of here right now, but eventually we'll use this file to set up all the different dynamic routes that we need inside of our application. What's much more relevant at this point in time is this object that we are exporting from the file. This routes object contains some different helpers that allow us to automatically navigate users around our application, and also helps us generate link tags to display inside of React components as well. Let's now flip over to our campaign's new component and make use of this thing inside of there. So inside of my code editor, I'll find the campaign's new.js file. So this is what we've been working on for the past couple of videos. At the top, we're going to import two separate helpers from that routes file that we were just looking at. So I'm going to import link and router from up two directories routes, like so. This link object right here is a React component that allows us to render anchor tags into our React components and navigate around the application. The router object allows us to programmatically redirect people from one page to another page inside of our app. So this is what we want to use after we create a campaign. So once a user creates a campaign, we're going to automatically redirect them back to the root route of our application. And then the link tag right here will help us set up some navigation if we feel like we want a user to be able to navigate around. In our particular component right now, campaign new, we don't have any actual links that we want to create. So we're not going to actually use this import here. So I am going to delete it. I just want you to know that it exists. So we're going to have only the router as an import. Okay, so now let's figure out how we actually use this thing. I'm going to scroll on down to our onSubmit helper. So here it is right here. Here's where we get our list of accounts. And then we call the create campaign function on our contract. So immediately after we successfully create our contract, we then want to redirect our user over to our campaign index page. So immediately after we call that function, I'm going to call router.pushRoute, and I'm going to pass in the route that I want to redirect my user to. So in this case, it's going to be our root route of simply /, like so. So we're going to get our list of accounts. We're going to create our campaign. This line of code is going to take about 15 to 30 seconds or so as we wait for the transaction to be confirmed by the network. And then immediately after that, we'll redirect our user back to the index route. So let's save this. We'll go back over to the browser and make sure that this thing actually works. All right, so I'm going to flip back over. I'm going to make sure I refresh the entire page. I'm then going to set up a new campaign with a minimum contribution of how about 200, and then I'll click on create. Now, just as before, we get our spinner right here to indicate that something's happening. I'll click on submit, and then we're going to wait about those 15 to 30 seconds. And after everything's complete, we should be automatically redirected back to our root route of our application. So now here's that kind of awkward point where we just kind of sit around and wait for a little bit. But while that's going, I do want to mention that right after this, we're going to open up the header, and we're going to use that routes helper to set up our CrowdCoin and other buttons up here as well. Okay, so notice how it looks like the page automatically refreshed and redirected me back over to the root route of our application. And now at the very top, or at the very bottom, I forget what order we're doing this in, we'll see that there is definitely a new campaign that has been created. All right, so that was a lot of setup for one very simple interaction. But like I said, setting up all this routing stuff was not only about setting up the ability to have dynamic routes. We also just went through all this stuff so that we could get access to that router object from our routes file. So that's why we went through all this exercise right now. Okay, so I think this is behaving the way we expect at this point in time. And that pretty much closes out our campaign new component at this point. So let's now take a break. We're going to come back in the next video and make sure that we set up all the different links inside of our header as well, so that a user can actually navigate around our application.